YouTube, it's Chris. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to empower you guys and teach you guys how to measure your own system latency without any special tools. We're going to use FrameView for this, okay? We're also going to need an NVIDIA graphics card, and we're going to need a reflex supported game. Now, for the AMD users out there that have graphics cards, I do have you slightly covered. With FrameView, we can still measure frames, 1% and 0.1s, but we can't get the latency metric. What we can do is we can use MSI Afterburner with Rivet Tuner. There's a new overlay using an NVIDIA tool called PresentMon, and you can get some rough latency metrics, which you might find beneficial. I actually don't find it too reliable. I find it sort of in early beta stages compared to me testing with my external tools, my monitor, latency tool, and FrameView. I don't find it that reliable or that great, but it's still something. And just so you guys know, in the future, I'm going to be doing a GitHub guide on how to build your own external latency tool. And this will also measure, because FrameView will not measure your monitor latency. So that'd be scan out, pixel response times, refresh rate. It also won't measure your mouse latency either, right? So with the external tool, which will be on GitHub soon with a new video and a guide on how to build one, you can get all of that, right? The full throughput latency, the mouse latency, the scan out, the pixel response times, refresh rate, the whole thing, all right? So stay posted for that. There's a little bit of a teaser for you guys, but for this video, we're going to be measuring latency without any special tools required. All right. So we're going to need FrameView. We're also going to be using CapFrameX. Now you can measure stuff, frames, 1% lows and stuff with CapFrameX. I actually find FrameView way more reliable and a lot easier. And you also get the latency metric too if it's a reflex supported game, which is basically the purpose of this video. But I find CapFrameX very, very easy to use to import and see what the files are doing. So we can import the files in here and we can actually see some nice graphs and some nice metrics. So that's why we'll be using CapFrameX, but we won't be using CapFrameX to measure. Okay. We'll also be using Microsoft Excel. And if you guys don't like Microsoft Excel, there is a free open source version called OpenOffice that you guys can use. So let's get started with the video. Go ahead and download FrameView and go ahead and download CapFrameX and install it. Now with FrameView, it's pretty straightforward and very easy to use. I quite like this program and what they've done with it. Now go ahead and put the directory where you want your benchmarks to be. The default directory will probably be fine for most of you. We can change the benchmarking hotkey here. They only give you two options, F10 and scroll lock. If that isn't good enough for you and you want it as a different keyboard shortcut, I've got you covered. Find the FrameView shortcut and we'll go open file location to find out where it's actually installed. You can go to settings.ini and we can actually change the benchmarking hotkey key here. So links are all in the description, by the way. Here's a website of the key codes. So like 145, right, is obviously scroll lock, as you can see here. So we could change it to anything. Like let's say we wanted to change it to backspace. We would just change that number to 8. You could change that to 8 and then save it and away you go. Now I'm just going to be using scroll up. I find it a little bit easier with my setup. Got a 60% keyboard at the moment. Silent mode, leave silent mode alone. Don't turn it on. It's really useful. It's going to play a sound when it's benchmarking and it's going to play a sound when it stops benchmarking. It's really handy. Capture delay we don't need. You can set it if you like. I want it to capture straight away. Capture duration, you can set this to whatever you want for the purposes of this video. I'm just going to do 30 seconds. Now, if you wanted to do a proper test, 30 seconds wouldn't be enough. But just for this video, all right, I just want to show you guys real quick. Now, if you set the capture duration to 0, what that means is it's not going to automatically stop the benchmark. You're going to have to manually stop the benchmark. So you would have to press scroll lock to start the benchmark and then scroll lock again to stop the benchmark when you were ready to stop the benchmark. If we set any kind of a duration here, we'll only have to press the benchmark hotkey once. And then in this duration of time, so 30 seconds later, it will stop automatically. All right. We have the overlay screen location. You can set that wherever you like. I find it quite nice here. Now, unfortunately, there's no way to change the scaling or size of the overlay at all, which is a little bit annoying if you're on 1440p or 4K because it's relatively kind of a small text. No way to change that. Maybe NVIDIA will change that later. I don't know. There's some extra features and options we can enable. Dropped frames and performance per watt. You guys can toggle those on if you find them interesting. I don't find they help for anything that I'm doing at the moment, so I'm actually not using them. Now let's open up CapFrameX. We're going to need to use this as well. So instead of viewing the frame view data and the benchmarks that we're saving, because it's going to save it in a CSV file, we can use Excel, and we will use Excel, and I'll show you guys how to use Excel, but to save a lot of time and headache, and we're going to use CapFrameX because it's a really nice overlay and it can give us some nice comparisons with files very, very easily for someone who's not very confident in Excel and analysis and stuff like that. If you are using CapFrameX and you don't want it to interfere with your River Tuner settings, my recommendations would be go to Remote here and hide OSD on RTSS. Then also go to Overlay, click on the 3 dots, and then click Auto Disable OSD. That way it won't be using River Tuner because we're not going to be benchmarking with CapFrameX. We're benchmarking with FrameView. We don't want River Tuner sort of popping up and screwing with our own River Tuner settings. And also we're not benchmarking with CapFrameX. We're simply just using it for the UI and the comparison. Right. So that's that. Now I'm going to minimize that. Let's boot up a Reflex supported game, right, with our NVIDIA graphics card. And let's go get some latency values. Okay, I've got a game open. We do not need Reflex on to get the latency metric at all. Now, my recommendation is if you're chasing frames enabled, but if you want lower latency and you don't mind a little bit less frames, you want to go enable plus boost, okay? So that's really up to you guys. At the end of the day, in my opinion, well, it's a matter of fact, latency matters more than frame rate. Frame rate is just a number at the end of the day, okay? The latency actually matters more. So I'd always recommend enable plus boost, even if you run enabled, and then you might see like 30 more frames with just enabled in X or Y specific title. Just go enable plus boost. So for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to do 4K, everything low other than textures and anisotropic filtering at 16 times, right? So let's just go boot into some sort of a scenario. Ideally, it would be more ideal for you guys to test in real world game applications if you want to know what you're actually doing in game. But for just testing simple things like BIOS settings, Windows settings, graphics settings, NVIDIA control panel settings, anything like that that you want to see if it's actually helping, not doing anything, or making things worse, I would recommend more of a controlled environment. So this video, we're going to use a controlled environment. I'm just going to use the test range. All right, so we're in the test range right here. And as you can see on the top left, and I apologize, it's very, very small because I'm on 4K, you'll have FPS, you have 1% lows, PCL, PC latency. So that's a metric that this video is all about. You guys can measure your own system latency without any special tools, right? Minus monitoring keyboard latency, right? We've got the CPU, graphics card, and then we've also got the CPU here, right? We also have some other values, FIT, and you can look up the frame view documentation for that. I might show you guys that a little bit later. But yeah, F is for full screen, I is for independent flip, and T, I can't remember, we'll get that up in a second, but let's just do a quick benchmark. So I'm going to press, what was it, scroll lock, and you'll hear that little sound. It's going to be benchmarking away, doing its thing. And then soon, in about 30 seconds or so, we'll hear the sound, and that's how we know it's actually stopped. So we've got that part of the test done. Now, in this video, there's a sound you guys could hear. And it gives you like average PC latency, and it gives you the metrics there, like the rough metrics there, but we can go open those in CapFrameX or Excel and see the more detailed stats. Okay, so for the purposes of this video, I mean, this game engine has a 600 FPS cap, so let's do something interesting. Let's test, I don't know, 240 FPS. We'll cap to 240 FPS, see what the latency difference is like. And then maybe we'll test VSync as well. So we'll just do a couple of runs of different things, right? So we'll cap to 240 FPS. I'll apply that. And then we'll just check. It's capping to 240. I'll run the benchmark again. And then I might just test uncapped VSync, which would be at 240 because it's a 240 Hz display. And then I might test VSync capped at 237, which just be some interesting values. We can actually quickly see that our latency went up by 2 milliseconds there just by capping to 240, which is quite interesting. So I'm going to go back to sort of uncapped should I say, not in-game resolution. I don't want that. Nope. We'll go back to, we could test that too, which would be interesting. That would be technically 8K if I went 200 on 4K. But yeah, I wanted to turn VSync on. So with uncapped, because now it's going to cap to 240 and we'll see how bad the latency is there. So I'm going to start benchmarking. And there we have it. Our latency is 13 milliseconds. So it's gone up a lot. Obviously, remember, this is not including monitor latency or mouse latency as well. You'll have to stack those on top. If you guys really want those, you can look at, you know, my external tool guide in the future. So that's quite bad. Now let's see what VSync is like if we cap. So we're away from that sort of VSync value where it's like bouncing off the monitor's refresh rate, because that's going to be an interesting one. So generally speaking, in-game frame rate caps aren't always very reliable. So I'm going to go 300 just to be safe, so we don't get too close to the VSync, you know, latency issue. So 237, it looks like it's not bouncing around too much. I think we're good. Let's benchmark that. And we benchmark that, and now our latency is only 7 milliseconds. So with VSync on, right? So kind of wanted to do that just to show you guys some different, if you want to play with different settings and see what the latency is like. So let's quit the game and let's go boot these CSV files up in CapFrameX, and we can actually nicely compare them against each other. And then we'll also boot it up in a spreadsheet just so I can show you guys how to get the actual more accurate reading of the latency metric. Right, now in CapFrameX, we can set our root capture folder just by simply clicking on it. Okay, I've already done that here, but the files aren't showing up because this program sort of needs to refresh. So to do that, just go to another subfolder and then go back to it, and then we'll get the metrics here. Now, what I like to do is I actually like to use like the comment section. So the first one was just 600 FPS, right? And then the next one we did was 240 FPS. So we can just type that in here, and you actually have to press enter. And then the next one we'll do is, what did we do? We did VSync. And the VSync value was at, yeah. So we just type VSync for that one. And then this one was VSync capped. Capped at 240 FPS. Just to quickly show you guys. Now it's quite nice. We can simply click analysis and click on each individual files. And we can see some nice graphs here if you individually want to look at them. So I'll move that a little bit to the left there so you guys can see, and I'll make it a little bit bigger. We've got sort of the average 1%, 0.1s. If you guys don't see that, I believe you can change them. Those are the only ones that I'm interested in. And it should say latency for you here, unless you need to enable a setting, I believe. Now, this is heavily rounded off, this latency value. So take that, don't take it with a grain of salt. Like, it's accurate, but it's heavily rounded off. So if you want the actual proper latency value, I'll show you guys how to get that in a spreadsheet shortly. But as you can see here, we can see, you know, from 600 FPS to 240 FPS, about a 1 millisecond difference with VSync on without capping, constantly bouncing off the monitor's refresh rate. Latency gets very, very bad. That's why VSync has a bad name, but people don't quite understand why. And then VSync capped, a lot more reasonable. Now, obviously, like, you'll want to compare these, right? So we can go to comparison, and we can simply double click on all of these, and it will give us like sort of a nice comparison graph, which is really cool. Now, if you want to include latency in here without using a special Excel spreadsheet, like you guys might have seen me do that in other videos, if you want to just remove all of these, by the way, you can just click that, which is quite nice. And then also I will show you with CapFrameX, if you guys want to take a screenshot of that, don't screenshot the desktop, just press this button and then hit save. Now, I've got that to go to my data folder, right? So I believe it is in here. I'll find it. There it is there. There's a screenshot. So it kind of gives you a nice screenshot, which is really cool. Right, just by pressing that screenshot button, which is right here. Okay, let's say we want to add these latency metrics in here, like just so we can see it in this graph. I'll show you guys how you can do that too. So we'll just go back to capture. And what I've set to is I've set RAM in here. I've added RAM as like a value. Just select RAM. And what we'll do is we can go get the actual value, the proper value, and we can just type it in here. That's how I like to do it. You guys might quite enjoy that. All right, so I'll go to my data folder, and then we've got the files here. All right. Now, if you guys are getting confused where you're doing different benchmarks, my advice is when you're in the game, do one benchmark, alt tab, come in here and do a comment just so you don't get confused. You don't do a bunch of benchmarks and then forget which one was which. Now, we want to get the actual proper value because this is like heavily rounded off, right? This number here. So if you've got Excel, go ahead and grab that, Microsoft Excel. You should be able to do this in OpenOffice. If you don't want to use Excel, I'm actually not quite sure how to grab the averages in OpenOffice. So you're sort of on your own there. You might have to look up a tutorial. I'll be using Excel. So we'll open up this file and you can see it by date and time. So we'll make sure we've refreshed that. So that should line up with that. So now I'll open this up in Excel and we'll get sort of average. This is what all the data looks like in a spreadsheet, right? And CapFrameX is just putting that in a nice UI for us. Now, you won't see any of this if you haven't opened it in CapFrameX first, right? You would just see simply just this and below. But what we really want here is we wanted the actual proper latency value. So what we need to look for in here is PC latency, okay, which is right here. Now, the easiest way to grab all this data in a spreadsheet is we'll just click this one here. All right, and we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom. And then we'll click this last, we'll hold shift and click this last one, and then we'll press this button and we'll go to totals and go to average, and then it will give us an average. So it's actually 3.908, blah, blah, blah. So I will copy that, right? And then I can paste that in here. So I will just paste that. We could round it off, but I won't round it off. Right, and then on to the next one. So I'll grab the next file. And we can just simply do that if you guys actually want the, you know, the true latency value, okay? So here we go. PC latency is what we're after. All right, click the top one. We'll hold shift. I'll scroll down quicker because that's taking way too long. Hold shift, press that, press charts, sorry, totals, average, and then I'll copy that. Then paste that in here. Just type MS for milliseconds so we don't get confused, and you guys will see why in a second. And I'll continue to do it for this and this. All right, we're done there. So we've got our latency values, and as you can see how heavily they're rounded off here. We've got 7.61 milliseconds with VSync capped, right? I should probably retype that because technically we capped it to 237 FPS. All right. Look, it's 8 milliseconds there, but the actual value is 7.61. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you guys how to do it this way. Don't just read that and think that's everything. Now we can go to comparison and we'll just double click on all of these. And we can actually see a nice sort of like overview of everything and the latency. So obviously FPS wins here, 600 at 3.9 milliseconds, capping to 240 FPS. We lose a bit, it's 5.1 milliseconds. With VSync, without capping, very, very bad latency, 13.6 milliseconds. And then VSync capped it to 37 FPS, 7.6 milliseconds. Okay. Now, VSync isn't too bad when you start to get on higher refresh rate monitors, right? And it isn't too bad on sort of like if I wasn't as GPU bound in this situation here too. So just to let you know. So don't look at that and just be like, oh my God, you know, VSync, even if it's capping, it adds 2 milliseconds. That's not the case. If you're on a 360 Hz monitor, it's going to be completely different, capping to 357 if you're on a 540 Hz monitor. And it can depend on game engine. It can depend if the game is actually using double buff. Is it triple buffering? Yeah, triple buffering. Like if we went and tested VSync on in the NVIDIA control panel, but off in game, also in the NVIDIA control panel, will probably have better results too, because I have a feeling Overwatch is using triple buffering for VSync. That might be why. But yeah, look, really great way of measuring latency, guys, and it's dead on accurate. Okay, just try if you're testing BIOS stuff, overclocking stuff, Windows stuff, custom ISOs, whatever you guys do, game settings, graphic settings, driver settings, anything. Try to do it in a more controlled environment and maybe longer tests and maybe multiple tests, right? Because sometimes games can bug out, game engines can bug out. You might not be in proper full screen, or this or that, X or Y might happen, right? So, but this is a great way of doing it, and also a great way of getting rid of a lot of placebo. okay, without any special tools required. Because I'm sick of people telling me and asking me, what do you think of this custom ISO? What do you think of this window setting? What do you think of that window setting? And there's so much stuff that doesn't matter. So people can use this without any special tools for peace of mind, especially if you want to be sure on the best setting, the lowest latency, or maybe you want something in between. You want to crank up some graphics settings, but you're paranoid. How much extra latency am I actually adding by running high textures or this setting or that setting? So really useful, really helpful. And that's about it for CapFrameX. So what else did I want to show you guys? If you wanted to, you could make your own spreadsheet, kind of like I have done here, and you could technically integrate it into FrameView. It would be quite complicated, but it could be done. For the moment, I've just got my own template and I'm just typing in the numbers if I want it in a nice graph, if I don't want to specifically be using CapFrameX. But for most of you, honestly, I would just use CapFrameX in comparison. Click on all of these and then just click you know, screenshot, save, and then you'll have a nice little photo there. That's how you can compare things. It's a lot easier than having to use, you know, looks like it bugged out there. It didn't save those values. I must not have pressed enter. But anyway, now FrameView will spit out, look, every time you do a benchmark, FrameView is going to spit out a different file, right? Like this, because we did 4 benchmarks, but it'll also sort of give you a summary file as well. In the summary file, you might find a little useful if you just want to quickly look at something. So these are the 4 tests that we did here. All right. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it can give us like average. Look at the average FPS we've got there, and look, even just straight away, like it's already done the averages for us on the average PC latency, like there, and there. See if I can zoom in on that a little bit for you guys, so you can see a little bit better. So just thought I'd mention that might help you out a little bit in your journey testing things. There is also, you've even got max PC latency, minimum. It's worked out the averages for you already. That's really handy and really helpful. Rather than you having to manually do it yourself. So yeah, you could come in here and just grab this number, that number, that number, that number. My advice is if you're sort of done testing and you've saved everything you need to save, just delete all these files so you don't get confused when you do other tests and start again. Obviously, if you delete those files, they will not be available in CapFrameX 2. Okay, so just letting you know they're completely gone. Now, there is another cool thing, which is kind of out of date, but I want to show you guys too. They kind of took this file down. It's quite hard to find. So this is the older version of FrameView 1.2. It's the older version. They actually included a analysis template, right? Which is kind of handy. And I'll show you guys that really shortly, but you can import the file in Excel using the template and it can give you some cool like graphs and metrics. Now, it's not incredibly compatible with the new FrameView, but I just wanted to show you anyway. And then another thing I wanted to show you was, so here's the latest FrameView documentation, right? The little metrics that we saw on the top left, which was like TI, here we go. So if you want to know what they are, like F means full screen. So it's nice to know because these things actually matter for latency too, depending on what Windows you're on. If you're on Windows 11 with Windows optimization, Windows for full screen, whatever it's called, optimization for window games. If you've got that on, that'll actually force independent flip in most DirectX and 11 under games anyway. So like it doesn't really matter as much whether you're on full screen or not on Windows 11 if that setting is on. But yeah, it'll tell you kind of what flip model you're in. T for tearing, so that means that you wouldn't have any VSync on. W for windowed mode, V for VSync on. So it's kind of cool to have those metrics there. If you guys want to understand what they do, you can download the documentation from NVIDIA. You want to have a bit of a read. And now I'll show you guys the custom template, and I will upload it to my GitHub because it is quite difficult to find nowadays. Right, so I've uploaded the FrameView analysis template on GitHub. It'll be under Freaky Tweaks files repository. So that's actually, it won't be pinned here. So you'll have to go look at my repositories and you'll have to click files and you can find it there. If you guys are interested in grabbing it, I don't think most of you will need it, but some of you might actually want to play around with it. And because it was quite hard to get, I had to get the old FrameView installer somehow and then grab the file. So I figured I'd just upload it just so we could save it. But I'll show you how it works. I've just done another benchmark really quickly. in Overwatch just at 600 FPS uncapped, just so we can sort of open up the raw file. So it's not sort of, it hasn't been opened with CapFrameX. So none of the, you know, hasn't been edited at all or tampered with, right? Ideally, if we were going to use this NVIDIA template. Okay. So as you can see, it hasn't been tampered with. That's how it should originally look like if you haven't opened it with CapFrameX or edited or added anything in CapFrameX to it. So we'll open up the template and then you would click, I mean, you can compare it against a few different ones, but just for this video, I will just open up one to show you guys. So where did I put that? I put that in test data, and there it is there. We'll open that and then boom, take a little while to load. And as you can see here, so this is sort of what NVIDIA did for FrameView 1.2, but they haven't really updated it for the newer FrameView versions, and they haven't included sort of like the latency metrics because that got added later in the later FrameView builds. So, but I mean, you guys might find this useful. You might want to play around with it. It is fairly cool, but we don't really see PC latency here because they haven't added that. So maybe someone could, you know, hassle NVIDIA to do that. That would be cool. You could just use this instead. It would save a bit of time and effort, but it's there. And if anyone wants to use it, I've uploaded it, so you don't lose that file. Now, I also want to show you guys something else, especially for the AMD guys out there. I mean, obviously you could still be using FrameView to measure your 1%, 0.1s and 0.1s, right? But MSI Afterburner with River Tuner, I believe 7.3.6 should have this overlay in it. If it doesn't, your link will be in the description. You'll have to go to the MSI Afterburner forums and you could download a 7.37 if you guys don't have this, but for now just try 7.36 because I believe 7.36 will have it. We'll open MSI Afterburner, okay, and then you should have had River Tuner installed as well. All right, go to setup, go to plugins, and then go to overlay editor, hit setup. Okay, this is my custom overlay I'll be doing a video on later. If you guys want this, it is on GitHub if you're interested in my optimization guide. But go to layouts, go to load, okay, and you should see all the overlays here. Now, I believe it's called Reflex, so you could use that. And then we'll have NVIDIA Reflex right here. Okay, I apologize. I actually had to install the beta version to get this. So here's a bit of a video on it here. I'll link this in the description as well. But yeah, if you guys, the AMD users, you're going to need to install 7.37 beta 3. Okay, and then you'll actually see the latency, present mon latency analyzer. That's what you guys will have to use. All right, so I will show you guys the reflex overlay. Now, you may need to have in River Tuner the latency markers on. Just letting you know, if you have this setting on, it will conflict with FrameView and you won't be able to measure latency with FrameView while River Tuner is open. But just to show you guys sort of the overlay, I'm going to select inject, then I'll open up a game and show you guys what it looks like. Okay, so there's the NVIDIA Reflex latency there. Now, like I said, I actually don't find it too reliable compared to using FrameView, but if you guys are interested in playing around with it, great, use it. But if you want to do some proper benchmarks and get some proper results, just please use FrameView. Let's select the other one. So in the layout editor, we'll go load. We could also merge as well if you wanted to, if you guys wanted to have two of them merge, but this isn't a River Tuner guide, so I'm not going to cover that. So you could go present mon latency analyzer, okay, then press open. Okay, and then I'll just boot up the game just to show you guys what that looks like in the game. Here it is here. And yeah, that's what the AMD graphics card users could use. You could use and this is simply using present mon to grab these metrics. So it's sort of a cool overlay. As far as how reliable the data is and grabbing and benchmarking it, I didn't have much luck. I found FrameView the best. But like, obviously you don't really have a choice. You have your AMD graphics card. So this is an option for you to use if you didn't want to use the normal present mon program or the CMD version of present mon. this might be a little bit more easier for you to use. Now I'm putting my own overlay back on because I much prefer that one that I made. There'll be a video on this shortly. I think that'll be my next video. And I am going to make sure I turn off inject NVIDIA reflex latency markers, as this interferes with frame view latency metrics, or if I'm using one of my monitors that has the latency tool on it, it actually interferes with that. So I thought I'd mention that if any of you guys have any of those, right? So yeah, I think that was it. That's everything that I wanted to cover. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it helpful. I apologize if I've missed out on anything. One thing I will mention, if you guys are measuring 1% and 0.1% lows in real matches against real players, please be careful when you're doing that. You kind of want to get snapshots within gunfights, but you don't want to be going in and out of the menu changing settings while you're getting those values, and also the latency values too, because you know you could have some really clean 1% and 0.1. Like here, you'll have really clean 1% and 0.1s in the actual match, but then if you go into the menu, you're just ruining those values, right? So that's something I'd mention. Yeah, try to sort of get like snapshots of gameplay, because yeah, no, if you're doing like the whole game that you're playing, obviously like your frames are going to dip, your 1% are going to dip because you've gone into the menu or you've died and respawned. So there are some things like that that I'd mention. But yeah, no more excuses for, you know, people saying this setting's better than that setting, guys. Just use this. It's free open source. Well, it's a free, not open source, but it's a free tool to use. So there's no excuse, and it's very accurate from my measure, like from measuring with other tools that I have as well. So if you want to text X versus Y, you know, my the default XMP versus my RAM tune, how much of a difference does it make for latency? You're going to see that scaling there, okay? Obviously, you know, like I said, it's not measuring your mouse latency, okay? It's not measuring your monitor latency or the refresh rate at all. So, but you can't really change those things unless you go and get a faster mouse or higher polling rate, or go get a faster monitor, higher refresh rate. Obviously, if you've got a monitor that's a TN or IPS, you can change, or VA, you can change like the, you know, the overdrive setting, the pixel response times. You might get it like a little bit, you know, faster, but generally speaking, it's just like, that's just the hardware. So I think it's great what FrameView are doing. And yeah, no more excuses, guys. So if anyone ever says this setting feels better or that setting feels better, and I'm cringing really hard, and I just go, man, that does nothing, I'm just going to direct them to this video and do it yourself. Go test and see if there's any scaling there. But yeah, enjoy. Thanks a lot, guys. Sorry this video is a little bit all over the place, but I got out what I wanted to get out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.